Good evening, and welcome to a Friday Fireside Pipe Chat. Bearcat Piper Scott here, and tonight I am smoking my Rick Black Morta, and in it I have Hearth and Home Old Dark Fire. I think most everybody's had this. Oh, tonight, cheers. Drinking Blanton's Kentucky bourbon, my favorite bourbon. I'm going to do a fireside chat on bourbons as well. I make lump bourbons and Irish whiskeys together. But tonight, I'm going to talk about this right here. I'm going to talk about Morta wood. And I'm going to try to make this interesting. My brother Wildcat Piper often reminds me that not everybody is into the details like I am. As you'll notice, this wood is black. It's not been stained, it's not been painted, it's naturally black. It's called Morta. It's also called bog oak. This particular one is a Russian bog oak. And what happens is a tree, an oak tree in this case, falls into a bog, which is a real muddy, like bank or shallow water that is so muddy that it can't support weight, even weight of a person. You step in and you sink into a bog, and then that sinks and it starts the decaying process, and then water and sediment goes, and eventually for oxidation to occur, you have to have oxygen, and once it's blocked from oxygen, the decay stops, and it basically is in the fossilization process. This particular one comes from Ukraine. The city's Chernihiv, Ukraine. I'm absolutely sure I butchered that. The interesting thing is what makes these good for pipes is that when it's down there, it permeates with the minerals and the sap comes to the surface and all of that. And about 12% of this wood is minerals. Therefore, it's resistant to burn, which makes it good for a pipe because it doesn't burn. It also makes it resistant to ghosting. A lot of people refer to these being about the same as a meerschaum because they don't ghost, because the wood is dense enough that the flavors from the tobaccos doesn't permeate the wood. Try to keep this lit. This particular log was radiocarbon dated at 5,460 years old. I'm not going to get into all the carbon dating, but it basically goes on the premise that all organisms have an exchange of carbon, right? So this oak gets oxygen from the air, and it gets carbon dioxide, which we exhale, helps the plant, absorbs into the plant, and it uses that carbon, and then it releases that carbon through photosynthesis. And so there's this constant exchange of carbon. We do the same thing. We eat plants, we eat meat, we eat the things that we eat, we ingest the carbon. And then we also get it in air, we exhale it, we exhale carbon dioxide, so we have this constant exchange of carbon as well. But when a plant, or when humans, or whenever anything dies, they stop that carbon exchange, and therefore they try to go in and date the carbon that's in that organism, and then by dating, because there's no exchange, when that exchange stops, that tells you the age of the product, or the wood. And that's pretty much bog oak. About 5,460 years ago, this tree was standing. Now, for some of you historians, that's pre-flood. This tree, it goes before Jesus, it goes before the flood. If you believe in radiocarbon dating, there's some issues with that. In any case, it's old. But that time period is called the Neolithic time period, also known as the Stone Age. It's right before the Bronze Age. So people that lived in that time were making products out of stone, axes, knives. They hadn't started really. It's also about the time of the wheeled cart. Since it's Halloween, the earliest recorded mummies that we have date at that time period, the time when this tree was still alive. It's also about the time of the first pharaohs, the Egyptian pharaohs. The first, they call it the Pharaoh dynasty. You know, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I just think it's amazing that this tree goes back at least to the flood. I mean, they say that it's the dating's plus or minus 50 years. Let's say it's plus or minus 1,000 years. That puts it right at the flood. Maybe this tree was knocked down by the Great Flood. And the flood's not, I'm not talking about a religious, although I am very religious, but I don't want to get into that now. But I'm not talking about a religious period. The Smithsonian recognizes that there was a flood. They date the pyramids as post-Great Flood period. And they also recognize that there was something happened with the shift of man at that point. Of course, they explain it differently than religious people would. They explain it naturally. They try to explain how the natural events occurred to create that and how it changed all the plate shifts of the earth. But religious people think it was what the Bible says. You can even see pictures of watermarks on the top of Mount Everest. So if water had to be up at that point, you get the picture. You need to go visit Rick and buy one of these. They're not real expensive. And it's a great piece of history. And it's not a renewable resource. They're becoming more and more rare. They're extremely rare now, and we will run out of it. Or it'll just get ridiculous in costs. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you drink Blanton's. If you do, you know that the cap is a pure horse, the lid is, and each one of them are lettered. And if you buy the A through Z, you can put them on a plaque that you can get from Blanton's, and they make the Kentucky Derby. They're all in different strides of their see that? That's a horse. They're all in different strides. And it makes like a Kentucky Derby. So that's it for me tonight. I hope you've enjoyed our time. I thank you for watching Friday Fireside Pipe Chat. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. God bless. Semper Fi. Hoorah.